Welcome to On-Demand Instructions video about analyzing and interpreting a literary piece. This presentation is based on the Common Core Standards for Literature. In this session, we will be covering Core Literature Standard Number 1. By the end of this session, you should be able to analyze a literary text to understand its explicit meaning. You should also be able to figure out the text's implicit meaning and draw inferences from it. Lastly, you should be able to support your inferences by citing specific parts of the text. Why is literature important to us, and why should we even bother analyzing it? Literature allows us to experience a way of life, a point in time, a certain culture, or a specific deed or emotion. It transports us to faraway lands or to worlds that exist only in the author's mind. It is a source of information and of wisdom. The level of satisfaction we get from a literary piece depends on how well we understand the text and its underlying message. This is where our literary analysis skills will be of great use. For our activity, let's read and analyze each stanza of the poem by Emily Dickinson, which talks about dying. Because I could not step for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. In this first stanza, the main character is approached by death, who was in a carriage. She does not seem terrified, and even described death as a kind man. She boarded the carriage, which she realized held another passenger, immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. In this stanza, we are told that they slowly went on their way to wherever it is they are going. The main characters seem to like death's politeness, that she left her work and her free time. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. In this third stanza, we find the main character describing the places they passed by. The school, the fields, and the setting sun could symbolize the stages of life, from childhood, as denoted by the school, to old age, as denoted by the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tulle. Here the main character suggests that the end of life is something that we do not plan for. The fact that she got chilly because she was underdressed tells us that she did not really prepare for this trip. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. In this fifth stanza, the main character and her companions stop before an underground house, her final dwelling or resting place. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. In the final stanza, we realize that the main character has been dead for centuries, and that she seems to be communicating to us from beyond the grave. Now that we've understood the explicit text, let us read a sample inference that can be made from the text and the citation that supports the inference. We may infer that we should not fear death, since it is just a step on the way to eternal life. To support this statement, we refer to some sections of the poem. Lines 3 to 4 in the first stanza, which reads, "The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality," indicates that the main character's journey doesn't just stop at death. lines 23 to 24 of the 6th stanza, which read, "I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity," indicates eternal life as the final destination of the main character's journey. What other inferences can you draw from the poem you just read? Do you think the main character was fully prepared for her journey toward death and eternal life? Read lines 14 to 16 of the 4th stanza to find out. Do you think she had a choice about when she was to die? Read the first 2 lines of the poem for the answer. Try to draw more inferences from the poem and provide supporting evidence. Now that you are familiar with the process of literary analysis, you might ask yourself, why is it important to acquire this skill, and where can I possibly apply what I've learned? You might not realize it now, but your ability to correctly analyze text and communicate your ideas clearly and effectively will serve you well, both in and out of the classroom. First of all, this skill can help you get through school projects that involve critical thinking. Evaluating TV and movie scripts will be much easier when you have effectively analyzed their underlying literature. Feasibility studies become more accurate when the data gathered has been correctly analyzed. Now that you have an idea on how this skill can help you in the real world, it's time to develop this skill further. Read the short story, The Gift of the Magi, and use the skills that you learned in this session to write an essay describing why the main character's gifts to one another were considered the wisest. You can find the story online at gutenberg.org. While doing an activity like this, you might come across some questions. The most common question is, where do I start? Or, what should I know first when writing about poetry or fiction? A good start would be to realize that you are making a written argument. Make sure that you have something specific you want to say about the text. Another question is, what can I write about? Common subjects include theme, the plot, and the characters. What guidelines should I use? Writing verbs in the present tense is a common practice. Making use of as many citations as you can to support your argument is also a good practice. Lastly, familiarize yourself with the Modern Language Association, or MLA, format when including citations from outside sources. In completing this session, you should understand that a literary text can have multiple meanings. You should be able to analyze the text to explain its explicit and implicit meanings, and make inferences from these meanings. Lastly, you are expected to be able to cite parts of the text that best supports your inferences. In this session, we learned how to analyze text, draw inferences, and cite supporting information. We did this using Emily Dickinson's poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. For further reading on this lesson, you may refer to the resource links. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check back at www.ondemandinstruction.com for more instructional videos, podcasts, and materials. We update the site weekly. Good luck with your writing!